Hello again, I'm Vladimere Lhore, the friend who masquerades, bitching and moaning as a legit critique and analysis, and this is Master of Unlocking. Going in, I expected things to be quite different from the last few games. When we looked at each of those, we got to see the progression of a series, learning what made Resident Evil, Resident Evil. But this series was more about the survival horror, as a genre, so now it's time to look at another series. Today's casualty being Silent Hill. So without further ado, and no restraint on spoilers, what's the difference? Wait. So the first thing you see when you start playing is everything is being rendered live, as opposed to Resident Evil's pre-rendered magic. Now look, I have an artful appreciation for pre-rendered backdrops, however, it's a very limiting and costly method for making games. When you pre-render, every detail has to be planned. Any small change to the angle or just to the scene could lead to hours wasted, while with live render you can just make the change and you're done. So cool, we should just live render everything, right? Well, the problem back in the day was the hardware really couldn't keep up, and this limitation led to the thick fog that the Silent Hill series is known for. It allowed them a level of fidelity in their environments that most games couldn't replicate, and it was great, and really let the environmental artists bring the vision to life. Plus, it helped make the player feel claustrophobic in open spaces. But with pros come cons. When your levels look like this, or this, or this, and you can't really take 10 steps without checking your map to make sure you're still going in the right direction, no one's really going to want to backtrack for your items. Luckily, Team Silent recognized this and said, fuck it, a limited inventory just isn't scary. We should just let them pick up everything they come across. Are you sure? Yes or no? And I agree, a limited inventory isn't the only way to survival horror. Management in the genre is more focused on working with limited resources on the map, like health and ammo, and the decision making around those resources. So you ask, if I could just pick up everything, where's the challenge? Silent Hill seeks its challenge in finding the items. The short draw distance and non-collectible objects just strewn about turns already obvious items into a game of I Spy. Plus, Silent Hill took its level design into account. A limited inventory really only works in small spaces, where the idea of backtracking isn't an absolute chore. If the space is too large, you either stipulate with an unlimited inventory, or a fuck ton of chests. And, I don't know, I think an unlimited inventory is better for immersion. Speaking of breaking limits, Silent Hill has an unlimited save system, as opposed to Resident Evil's ink cartridge system. The Resident Evil series added saves to your list of resources to manage, turning ink ribbons into something akin to Hellblade's permadeath system. It's certainly something to keep you worried, like what if I run out of saves? But the odds of a normal playthrough actually using the system consequently is very unlikely. Just like the other resources in these games, there is plenty to go around. However, the dread of the system biting you can lead to frustrations, and I think Silent Hill allowing the player to save as much as they desired at any save point was a better move. It offers low skill players a way to progress at their own pace, while giving well-versed players a scoring system at the end to best each run. In this way, the game encourages risky play for a better score, but the choice is openly yours. Okay, yeah, this one's easy. As expected, Silent Hill has good puzzles. Resident Evil 3 had the best puzzles of the Resident Evil games I've done thusly, and none of them really hold a candle to Silent Hill. Almost always, you're given all the info you need in a room when asked to figure it out. It's really good for those who want to stretch their brain muscles. The only puzzle I recall feeling that really towards was the elevator puzzle. Like, I explored all the rooms and then I didn't know what I missed, as I felt I had, looked everywhere. The game didn't really offer me any reason to go back into the elevator since the second and third floors were dead ends, and I could just get to the basement through the stairs. In this game, you got your bat demon assholes, dogs, bigger dogs, I have a knife, monkey men on the floor, bugs, fish people, regular people with bat growths, and squeaky baby ghosts. Wow, look at all these new creatures. No longer are zombies your main fodder. The monsters are very aggressive, and they actively want you dead. Almost every enemy has the potential to come at you with hunter speeds, and it really adds to the game's tension. But it also deters from exploration. So now we've come to the big one, dungeon design. Whereas Resident Evil basically takes place in one giant-ass dungeon that just leads to another dungeon, Silent Hill is more of a pseudo-open world with small dungeons placed around it. It could have been a full open world if the designers hadn't cut the roads, but I think it's good that they did. Having smaller areas to unlock over time helps the pacing and keeps the player from feeling absolutely overwhelmed. Not to say that the game doesn't attempt a small amount of overwhelming, as the first area is the biggest area, much like the Resident Evil series does. Just like Resident Evil, you're tasked firstly to get 4 keys to progress to the next area. Unlike Resident Evil, however, Silent Hill makes those 4 keys much easier to obtain, leaving no puzzles to really solve, so there is a lot less backtracking. In fact, if you just happen to explore the town in the right order, you can pick up all the keys with no backtracking. And I almost did. I just missed this one in the corner. It's fucking bullshit. Still, different to Resident Evil, where the first section is the most interesting area to explore, I think Silent Hill manages to keep a consistent level of intrigue throughout. The school is a neat little dungeon that quickly thrusts you into the nightmare. Rooms that were locked whilst exploring the real world are now open, and other pathways that were open are now blocked. I think Silent Hill has one of the best methods I've ever seen for reusing locations. Even though you're exploring the exact same building twice, the way the nightmare changes things makes it feel almost different enough that it's not a retread. Of course, just like Resident Evil before it, as you move along in the game, some areas become far more linear. The only reason Silent Hill manages to avoid this completely is with outdoor exploration. Once you get the key to unlock the third area, you could just go straight to the church, or you can spend a little time exploring and finding some items. From there, you go straight to the hospital, or you could explore and find some items. In Resident Evil, the spaces are tight enough that optional rooms never really feel like an out-of-the-way chore. Silent Hill tells you exactly where you need to go next, and then lets you indulge in your curiosity to explore the town. A big difference between these games is that while Resident Evil fills in the map while you go, and you could obtain an optional map to reveal the total number of rooms, Silent Hill will only lend you a hand if you acquire the map first. Usually it's right at the start, and it's not much of a hassle, but there is one section of the game right at the end with no map, and that becomes an absolute chore to explore. In the game's defense, the nightmare warps the space to fit rooms where they couldn't physically do so, and from my memory, having to draw lines between rooms is really annoying. I didn't like it when Bioshock did it. So, Silent Hill's level design is not really quite as puzzle boxy as Resident Evil until the final area, which feels like an annoyance because you have no map. With the subtle spike in puzzles and key collecting, it really kills the pacing of the game, whereas Resident Evil games start all wide and expansive while slowly funneling you down into a thrilling spiral of story and progression. Silent Hill decides to beat its way through, having large expansive areas followed by linear sets with another large expansive area to another linear set. This isn't too bad, as each bead shrinks in size, allowing you to speed through the content and immerse yourself in the story. But then suddenly, just as you feel the end coming, they plop 2 large beads. One is optional, but you'll most likely spend some time exploring it, so the size will be varied. Funnily, I always thought I'd like my survival horror games to be more consistent with its complexity of its puzzle boxes, but now I'm not so sure that was the best way to go about it. I think the bead design is a valid one, and it could still be as effective as the spiral. You just shouldn't make your last bead the toughest one. I understand you want to ramp up the challenge and test a player on their skills, however this runs the risk of killing your story momentum and can really make the game feel like a slog towards the end. While this doesn't touch on game design specifically, it is more about the art direction, and I do think the atmosphere plays a really big role in making Silent Hill a game that people remember. This game's palette is gray, red, muddy fucking brown. Generally I like more color, but I think this game uses its palette very effectively to convey the horror. The real world is full of these cool grays that desaturate the world and isolates you. Meanwhile, the nightmare makes use of reds to make the world feel as though it's become hostile. This game is comfortable in just letting the world breathe, the footsteps echo, letting the noise fill your ears when monsters are around, conditioning you to feel threatened when you hear the radio go off and when you enter a room, accumulating to feeling on edge even when there is no threat. The real world is bland and, well, real, helping build itself into this horror taking place in any small town. Meanwhile, the nightmare is uniquely grungy in a way that, when you see it, it feels distinct to that world. This was really hard to put together. It doesn't fit as easily into that groove I had made myself with the Resident Evil games. The more time it took for me to write this, the further I got from the points that I really wanted to make. I think all 4 of these games that we've looked at are still really fun to play, and none of them have aged too awfully from the gameplay standpoint. I'm glad the genre has multiple flavors to enjoy. Next, I'm thinking I'm going to try out Clock Tower, just to see how it does horror, or try out a bad survival horror game, try and figure out why it didn't work. Anyhow, thank you so much for listening. If you have any thoughts you'd like to share, leave them in the comments below, and until next time, have a good day, and don't forget to keep creating. Alright, I'm trying to get better at social networking. Subscribe, and then maybe follow my Twitter, or Tumblr, or something. I don't know. Anyway, bye-bye.